The moment my parents slammed the door behind me, I had nothing, no home, no backup, no plan. Except one old, scratched card my grandpa once told me never to throw away. When I handed it to the bank manager, he went silent, and the screen flashed, 1.2 billion. Getting kicked out by your own parents changes how you see everything: family, loyalty, and survival. I slept with questions heavier than my bags, wondering how love could turn conditional overnight. What they didn't know was that my grandfather had quietly prepared me for this moment. This isn't just a story about money. It's about dignity, patience, and the power of unseen legacy. It wasn't dramatic, no screaming, no tears, no scene that anyone would remember later. Just a few code words spoken with practiced calm, the kind that sound reasonable until you realize they're final. You can't stay here anymore. That was it. No explanation worth arguing with, no space for questions, no room for emotion. The door closed behind me with a soft click, and somehow that made it worse. Loud anger would have at least meant they cared. Silence meant the decision had been made long before that moment. I stood there for a second, staring at the door like if I waited long enough. It didn't. The house I grew up in suddenly felt like it had never been mine at all. Every memory, birthdays, late-night talks, family dinners, felt rewritten in an instant, as if they were conditional privileges instead of shared history. That was when it hit me: comfort isn't permanent. It exists only as long as you fit into someone else's expectations. What hurt most wasn't losing a roof over my head. It was realizing how easily belonging can be revoked. One day you're family. The next you're a problem to be removed. No warning, no transition, just a quiet erasure. I kept thinking I must have missed something. Some argument, some moment where I could have fixed it. But the truth was simpler and harsher. I no longer fit the version of me they wanted to control. As I walked away, every step felt heavier than my bag. The street looked unfamiliar, even though I'd walked it 100 times. I felt exposed, like the world could suddenly see that I had nowhere to go. That's when fear crept in, not panic, but a slow, sinking fear that settles into your chest and stays there. The kind that asks, "What now?" and offers no answers. That night changed how I understood security. I realized that what we call stability is often just borrowed time. We assume love is unconditional until it isn't. We assume support will always be there, until it disappears without a fight. And when it does, you're forced to see yourself clearly, stripped of safety nets and familiar roles. But there was something else growing alongside the fear: clarity. For the first time, I understood that staying comfortable had come at a price. Silence, compliance, shrinking myself to fit a plan that wasn't mine. Being kicked out hurt. But staying would have cost me more in the long run. That locked door didn't just end my place in that house. It ended my dependence on their approval. I didn't know it yet. But that moment was the beginning of something bigger. Losing comfort taught me resilience. Losing certainty taught me independence. And losing a place I thought was home forced me to start building one on my own terms. Sometimes, the coldest exits lead to the strongest entrances. Just not right away. My grandfather never bragged about anything he had done or built. If you didn't look closely, you would think he lived an ordinary, even modest life. He wore the same watch for decades, drove cars long after others would have replaced them, and spoke only when his words had weight. But in that quiet way, he taught me lessons that shaped how I survived the hardest moments of my life. Discipline wasn't something he explained with speeches. It was something he lived every day. He woke up before sunrise, kept his routine steady, and never chased attention. From him, I learned that consistency beats noise, and patience outlasts power. Silence was another lesson. My grandfather believed that people who talk too much often reveal their weaknesses, while those who observe quietly learn where real strength lies. When others argued, he listened. When others showed off, he stepped back. As a child, I thought he was simply reserved. As I grew older, I realized he was intentional. He understood that not every move needs an audience, and not every success needs applause. That silence taught me how to stay calm under pressure, how to absorb more than I reveal, and how to endure without complaining. Self-worth was the lesson he guarded most carefully. He never tied my value to money, status, or approval from others. Instead, he reminded me, sometimes with just a look, that dignity comes from knowing who you are when no one is watching. He taught me that needing validation makes you easy to control, and that independence starts in the mind long before it shows up in your circumstances. When I failed, he didn't rescue me immediately. He let me sit with the discomfort, because he believed resilience was built, not gifted. Shortly before he passed, he handed me that old, worn card. It wasn't shiny or impressive. In fact, it looked so ordinary that anyone else might have thrown it away. When he placed it in my hand, his grip was firm, and his voice was calm. He said, "This isn't for spending. It's for surviving." There was no explanation, no dramatic pause, no instructions beyond that. At the time, I didn't fully understand what he meant. I thought he was being symbolic, or maybe just sentimental. But I trusted him. I trusted the years of quiet lessons, the discipline I had watched, the restraint I had learned, and the dignity he had instilled in me. I kept that card through moves, setbacks, and moments when I had almost nothing. And later, when life stripped everything else away, I finally understood. He hadn't given me an object. He had given me a lifeline, timed for a moment he knew would come. I didn't walk into that bank expecting anything extraordinary. I wasn't chasing a miracle or dreaming of some movie-style reveal. I just wanted answers, clarity, maybe even closure. The card in my hand felt more symbolic than powerful, a worn piece of plastic tied to memories of my grandfather's calm voice and patient eyes. I remember standing in line, rehearsing what I'd say if they laughed me out of the building, telling myself I was only there to confirm that nothing was left. Hope felt dangerous, so I kept it small. When it was finally my turn, I slid the card across the counter with an apology already forming in my mind. The manager took it politely, the way you handle something you expect to be declined. He made casual conversation, asked routine questions, and smiled the kind of professional smile that never quite reaches the eyes. The machine beeped once, then again. He frowned slightly, leaned closer to the screen, and typed something in with more force than necessary. That was the first moment the room shifted. Subtle but undeniable, like the air pressure changing before a storm. His smile disappeared completely. The color drained from his face, as if someone had turned down a dimmer switch. He straightened in his chair, then sat back again, blinking hard, rereading the screen as though it might correct itself. I watched his hands begin to tremble, just slightly at first, enough that he tried to hide them by folding them together. The silence stretched too long to be normal. Other customers kept talking, printers hummed, phones rang. But inside that small space between us, everything felt suspended. He excused himself without explanation and walked quickly to the back, the card still in his hand. I stood there alone, heart pounding, convinced something had gone wrong. Maybe the card was flagged. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe I'd misunderstood my grandfather entirely. Every rejection I'd ever experienced came rushing back, stacking on top of each other, telling me not to expect anything different now. When the manager returned, he wasn't alone. 2 senior staff members followed him, their expressions tight and focused. He didn't meet my eyes at first. Instead, he looked at the screen one last time, swallowed, and finally glanced up at me with something I couldn't immediately identify. Fear, respect, maybe both. His voice dropped so low I almost didn't hear it when he spoke. He said the number carefully, as if saying it too loudly might shatter the moment. $1.2 billion. For a second, I thought I'd misheard him. The words didn't connect to reality. They floated in the air, meaningless, absurd. I laughed softly out of reflex, waiting for someone to tell me there'd been an error. No one did. In that instant, the weight of everything shifted. The nights of uncertainty, the door slammed shut behind me, the quiet confidence of my grandfather. It all collided. I wasn't overwhelmed by excitement. I was overwhelmed by understanding. This wasn't luck. This was intention. And as I stood there, staring at a future I never saw coming, I realized that some answers don't arrive gently. They arrive and change the room forever. It wasn't luck. It was legacy. What appeared overnight to everyone else was actually the result of decades of deliberate restraint, careful decisions, and a mindset built around the long game. My grandfather understood something, Most people never do wealth that screams is fragile, but wealth that grows quietly can survive generations. He never chased headlines or recognition. While others talked about success, he documented it, structured it, and protected it. Every move he made was intentional, rooted in patience rather than impulse. He invested when no one was watching and held when others panicked. Markets rose and fell, trends came and went, but he never chased the noise. He believed that time, not talent, was the most powerful multiplier. Compounding wasn't just a financial concept to him. It was a philosophy for life. Small, consistent actions, repeated over decades, would always outweigh dramatic gestures made for applause. That belief shaped everything he touched, from his finances to the way he treated people. What made his legacy extraordinary wasn't just the size of what he built, but the discipline it took to remain invisible while building it. He lived modestly, drove older cars, wore the same watch for years. People underestimated him, and he let them. He understood that ego is expensive, and control is an illusion. The louder someone needs to appear powerful, the more fragile their position usually is. My grandfather had no need to prove anything. His results would speak when the time was right. He also planned beyond his own lifetime. He thought in terms of protection, not just growth. Trusts, safeguards, contingencies, everything was designed to withstand conflict, betrayal, and even family pressure. He knew that money without structure becomes a weapon, and money without values becomes a curse. So he built both, quietly weaving responsibility into the foundation of his wealth. More than anything, he taught me that humility is a form of strength. He never confused net worth with self-worth, and he never let success turn into arrogance. He listened more than he spoke. He observed patterns others ignored. He understood that control doesn't come from domination, but from preparation. By the time circumstances forced my hand, his preparation became my shield. That moment in the bank wasn't a surprise to him. It was a promise fulfilled. Everything he had done was leading to that exact second, when I would need proof that stability exists beyond chaos, and foresight can outlast cruelty. He didn't just leave me money. He left me freedom from desperation, freedom from fear, and freedom from needing validation. His legacy is a reminder that true power doesn't announce itself. It waits. It grows. And when the world finally notices, it's already too late to stop it. The real victory wasn't the balance. It was the release. When I finally understood that, something heavy lifted off my chest. For the first time in my life, my sense of worth wasn't tied to anyone else's approval. I wasn't standing in that bank feeling powerful because of the number on the screen. I felt powerful because I realized I no longer needed to prove myself to people who had already decided my value based on their own expectations. For years, I had chased validation without even realizing it. Every achievement, every compromise, every silence I swallowed was rooted in the hope that love would be returned if I tried hard enough. But conditional love is never satisfied. It always asks for more while giving less. Standing there, I saw clearly how much of myself I had shrunk just to stay accepted. That realization hurt more than being kicked out, but it was also freeing in a way I had never experienced before. The money didn't erase the betrayal, and it didn't rewrite the past. What it did was remove fear. Fear of survival, fear of being alone, fear of failing without a safety net. Once that fear was gone, I could finally see the truth. I had been surviving emotionally long before I ever struggled financially. The door my parents closed behind me wasn't the end. It was the beginning of me stepping into my own life, without their shadow, hanging over every decision. Walking out of that bank, I felt lighter, not because I was rich, but because I was untethered. I no longer needed permission to exist, to succeed, or to choose my own path. The quiet confidence that settled in wasn't loud or arrogant. It was steady. It came from knowing that even if the money vanished tomorrow, the lesson would remain. I could stand on my own. I thought about my grandfather then, and I finally understood his greatest gift. He didn't just leave behind wealth, he left me independence. He showed me that true security isn't about control or dominance. It's about preparation and trust. He trusted me enough to let me discover my strength at the moment I needed it most. That day marked a shift in how I defined success. It stopped being about proving others wrong and became about honoring myself. I no longer felt the urge to explain, justify, or defend my choices. Silence became strength instead of weakness. Peace replaced the constant tension of trying to belong where I was never fully accepted. I walked out richer in confidence than cash, because confidence can't be taken away, frozen, or questioned. It grows when you stop asking for permission and start trusting your own resilience. And that kind of wealth changes how you walk, how you speak, and how you face the future. Knowing that no matter who turns their back on you, you will always have yourself. If you've ever been rejected, underestimated, or pushed aside, remember this: your value isn't decided by who turns their back on you. Sometimes, the people who believe in you most prepare your future in silence, and when your moment comes, stand tall. Your comeback doesn't need permission.